My analyses of Jedi Weapon Master Vodo-Siosk Baas will be drawn from the Tales of the Jedi comic series and radio play, the Power of the Jedi sourcebook, and the Jedi Academy Training Manual. As I stated in my previous upload, my views on Vodo Baas's martial proficiencies and skill set have changed. Firstly, I no longer believe that Baas is in any way helpless against either Jarkai or Saberstaff combat. In regards to the former, I initially disregarded the dual weapon fighting proficiencies listed on both of his RPG character sheets as inconsistencies that conflicted with the comics. But I have since realized that there is nowhere that Exar Kun could have learned this technique from, except for Baas himself. As to the latter, Vodo-Siosk's quarterstaff would actually have a significant logistical advantage against such a restrictive weapon as the double-bladed lightsaber, effectively possessing all of the strengths with none of the weaknesses. Instead, I would attribute Kun's victory on Coruscant to the Trikata tactics described in the original Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology, bewildering Baas's defenses and breaking his concentration before finishing him off with a power overhand. The second change in my analyses concerns the specifics of Baas's core moveset and the effective lethality of his weapon, which actually came up in my previous matchup involving Baas, the Subversive Traditionalists, which will also be detailed here in this matchup. My analyses of Jedi Battlemaster Kao Cen Darach.
Kao Cen Darach.
Wait. You mean that I've been pronouncing the character's name incorrectly for years?
Your mother is a...
Okay. My analyses of Jedi Battlemaster Kao Cen Darach will be drawn from the Return cinematic trailer, the Old Republic Encyclopedia, and the Journal of Nost Dural. Background information on Jedi training and lore will be drawn from the Essential Guide to the Force and the Jedi Path. With all of that out of the way, let us proceed with Vodo-Siosk Baas versus Kao Cen Darach, the Guardian Masters. A centuries-old Jedi Master, Vodo-Siosk Baas trained as a Jedi Guardian before ultimately coming into his own as a Jedi Weapon Master, specializing in quarterstaff. To accommodate this alternative weapon, Baas utilized the Force weapon power, imbuing mundane objects with Force energy to make them lightsaber resistant. When empowered, the quarterstaff has been observed shattering stone, which I believe was achieved by using the staff as a physical medium for tactile telekinesis, essentially delivering a force push via physical contact. However, Baas's ability to employ this power can be undercut by exhaustion and a loss of concentration, which allowed Exar Kun to shatter the staff in both of their major duels. A physical combat specialist, Baas emphasized force-enhanced reflexes and acrobatics, specifically employing acrobatic recoveries. Staunchly opposed to the dark side, he mastered farsight and force perception to detect threats, while guarding both himself and others from dark side influence with battle mind and battle meditation. An adept telekinetic, he could slam targets with force pushes and was proficient at disarming adversaries. Lastly, Baas was capable of creating a wall of light side energy to sever a Darksider's force connection, potentially permanently. However, Baas ultimately preferred to leverage his power through Force weapon rather than active Force abilities, and there are only 2 instances where he directly contends with another Force wielder. The first was when he attempted to extend the light side's protection around Exar Kun during his trials on Korriban, only to be blocked by the spirit of Freedon Nad, jolting Baas out of meditation. The second was when he led the Jedi strike team that apprehended Ulic Qel-Droma on Coruscant during the Great Sith War, telekinetically disarming Qel-Droma before combining powers with his fellow Jedi to temporarily sever him from the Force. Jedi Battlemaster Kao Cen Darach shared Vodo Baas's principled opposition to the dark side, but where Baas was close friends with then Supreme Chancellor Sidrona, Darach's rigid beliefs caused friction with the Republic political establishment. His assignment to the Korriban security outpost served to distance him from Coruscant, though Satele Shan suspected that Darach had foreseen the Sith invasion and requested the posting. While I believe that it's likely that Darach shared many of Baas's Force sensibilities, neither demonstrated any relevant telepathic abilities, both being physical combat specialists in any case. Darach's use of physical enhancement similarly emphasized agility and reflex, both combatants favoring technique over raw physical performance. Though capable of redirecting Force lightning with lightsaber combat, I do not believe that Darach was capable of combative Tutaminis. Telekinesis, on the other hand, Darach employed quite avidly. He saved Satele Shan's life by interrupting Malgus's killing strike against her with a lightsaber throw, repelled Vindican by blindsiding him with a Force push, repelled both Vindican and Malgus by channeling a Force wave into the hangar deck beneath them, and demonstrated his multi-ton lifting strength when he bombarded Malgus with Force-thrown debris and engine components. I believe that Darach's performance in the Return trailer is a good benchmark for his effectiveness against Vodo-Siosk Baas. Though they possess a similar level of aptitude with telekinesis, Darach is much more active and ingenious with it, and would be able to subvert Baas with abrupt Force integration, but Baas would be able to neutralize any large-scale assault analogous to Darach's bombardment of Malgus, likely through similar means. While Baas's mastery of battle meditation and sever Force demonstrates greater power and skill in an academic sense, Darach's deft application of more conventional abilities makes him more tactically viable, even if all he can do is subvert Baas rather than strike him down. Kao Cen Darach gets the edge as a Force wielder. Though the Krivaki were a long-lived species, the centuries-old Vodo-Siosk Baas was an elderly specimen. A crustacean, he was distinguished by his red exoskeleton and his 8 segmented tentacle limbs, 2 of which he used as arms, while the remaining 6 were concealed beneath his flowing Jedi robes, a cultural response to widespread xenophobia. The tentacles boasted a greater range of motion than conventional humanoid limbs, providing significant advantages when climbing and grappling, clearly enabling Vodo Baas's acrobatic recoveries, though they lacked fine dexterity. However, his physical strength was middling, and he wasn't capable of handling significant physical strain, pounded into submission by Exar Kun's strength-based Jarkai technique on Dantooine. Though Vodo-Siosk Baas's anatomy provided significant advantages, he was undercut by his age and ultimately relied entirely on armed combat. Kao Cen Darach was a Zabrak male of unspecified age, though I estimate him to be approximately 40 years old. A humanoid, he was distinguished by his horned scalp, an extra heart, and the traditional Zabrak facial tattoos. He demonstrated his exceptional agility through his frequent use of acrobatic rotations and evasions, and his high dexterity through his use of twin lightsabers and his refined overall technique. Zabrak were renowned for their physical hardiness and high pain threshold, attributes which Darach supplemented with his set of Jedi battle armor. The armor featured lightsaber-resistant plating, specifically gauntlets and greaves, thigh guards, a codpiece, and a breastplate, though a gap in the plating left his lower abdomen exposed. However, though strong enough to handle a full-sized Saberstaff with one hand, he wasn't prepared for slugging matches, nor did he have the stamina to continue fighting indefinitely, both factors contributing to his death at Malgus's hands. Intriguingly, both combatants were pounded into submission by strength-based applications of Jarkai, though their common inability to weather such a storm is a non-issue here, as neither is so overbearing as Exar Kun or Darth Malgus. Though the unrestricted range of motion provided by Vodo Baas's tentacle limbs remains a significant advantage, his age prevented him from fully capitalizing on his species' attributes. Kao Cen Darach, on the other hand, clearly possessed a higher athletic performance level, whereas Baas was wholly reliant on his technique. Furthermore, Darach's lightsaber-resistant Jedi battle armor provided superior protection compared to Baas's exoskeleton, though how effective it would be against Baas's force-imbued quarterstaff is in question. But be that as it may, Kao Cen Darach gets the edge for physical ability. Vodo-Siosk Baas was armed with a simple wooden quarterstaff, enhanced with the Force in order to combat lightsabers. The staff was the exotic alternative weapon that Baas specialized in as a Jedi weapon master, though he was proficient with traditional lightsaber combat and dual weapon fighting. Baas's most formidable apprentice was the Naiman master Exar Kun, who followed his instructor's example by adopting a specialist weapon to optimize his fighting style. However, where Kun used the dual-phase settings in his Saberstaff to reconfigure the weapon by controlling the properties of its blades, Baas's simple stick was purely a vehicle for the old master's refined core technique. With his every move honed to a reflex action, the Kravaki was a dynamic yet conservative fighter, maintaining balanced postures while employing acrobatic recoveries when necessary. With his staff, he typically utilized a center grip when defending, parrying strikes with the belly of the weapon, while wielding it as a polearm when attacking, striking with the ends. Baas used his top-tier melee defense to deflect aside attacks, setting up for rapid strike counters. He was adept at hurling opponents off balance with sweeping body shots, while targeting limbs to disarm and disable. Both of the lightsaber duels that Vodo Baas has been featured participating in were against Exar Kun, and both followed a similar pattern, with Baas seizing an early advantage against Kun's conventional lightsaber technique, only to be quickly overwhelmed when Kun resorted to alternative weaponry. On Dantooine, Baas subverted Kun's balance and had him at his mercy almost immediately, with Kun refusing to acknowledge his defeat and lashing out with twin blades, hammering on Baas's defenses and shattering his weapon. On Coruscant, Kun's clearly improved technique allowed him to contend evenly with Vodo-Siosk, before turning the tables by unveiling his Saberstaff, his Trickata feints and counters clearly confusing Baas's defenses, before again shattering Baas's staff with a power overhand, this time killing him. Kao Cen Darach's lightsaber followed a standard robust design model, projecting a green plasma blade likely generated by an Adegan crystal. He was confirmed to have attained the rank of Jedi Battle Master, which entailed proven mastery of all 7 classical lightsaber forms. Specifically, he was a noted Saberstaff combat instructor while demonstrating an adept twin-bladed technique and a proficient understanding of Trickata tactics. My personal belief is that his core technique was founded on a mixture of Ataru and Naiman. Darach's overall moveset was quite dynamic. His core physical component was centered around heavy gymnastics, clearly applying the Su-Ma rotations to drive his strikes and evade attacks. Despite these committed acrobatics, he was a delicate swordsman, favoring wide slashes with the tip of his blade, push cuts with the edge, and the occasional thrust. His defensive component consisted of striking parries, driving blocks, and some blade binding. Additionally, he supported his style with avid telekinetic integration. When engaging Vindican and Malgus, both alongside Satil Shan and later on his own, Darach rushed in and engaged the Sith directly, yet immediately shifted into a defensive posture, allowing them to chase after him while countering opportunistically. Against Vindican alone, he was able to effectively keep the Elder Sith at bay while also intervening on Shan's behalf against Malgus, before repelling Vindican with telekinesis. Against the two Sith together, he was armed with Shan's Saberstaff alongside his own lightsaber, using the extra weapon to execute Trikata subversions, off-balancing and ultimately subduing Vindican. However, mounting fatigue prevented him from managing a repeat performance against Malgus, who channeled his rage and pounded Darach into submission, cutting him down. Compared to the lightsaber, Vodo-Siosk Baas's quarterstaff represents a significant trade-off. On the one hand, its greater length provided a substantial reach advantage and more surface area for striking and blocking, making for an overall more user-friendly weapon. But on the other hand, the force empowerment could not be maintained indefinitely, especially not against an overbearing opponent capable of pushing Baas to his limits. Fortunately here, Kao Cen Darach shared Baas's emphasis on delicate subversion, both constructing techniques centered around active defense to interrupt and off-balance opponents. Due to the similarities between their fighting styles, I see the advantage ultimately being decided by their weaponry. Vodo-Siosk's style was built around fully utilizing the quarterstaff, where Kao Cen's varied weapon proficiencies weren't applicable without those weapons, leaving him with only traditional lightsaber combat and conventional Trikata tactics. Where Exar Kun's dual-phase Saberstaff allowed him to employ such tricks without completely compromising his defenses, for Darach, a deactivated lightsaber is a fatal opening that would spell instant death against a martial artist of Baas's caliber. For this reason, it's likely that Darach would approach Baas much as he approached Vindican, keeping him at arm's length with active defense and telekinesis. However, Baas's acrobatic recoveries allow him to hit the ground fighting, while his quarterstaff can strike from a distance and dominate in the bind, a polearm being harder to deflect aside. Though I attribute Vodo-Siosk Baas's advantages over Kao Cen Darach to logistical factors rather than a significant skill differential, I consider the best analog for a hypothetical contest between these two to be the first duel between Count Dooku and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Both combatants utilized conservative, defense-oriented fighting styles, with Baas's quarterstaff providing the same advantages as Dooku's Makashi technique, superior active defense and leverage in the bind. I declare Jedi Weapon Master Vodo-Siosk Baas the victor.